Thank you so much for coming back. I have either 3 hours of dinosaur stuff to talk about or 30 minutes with questions. Let's see. This is not a pre-scripted, pre-programmed talk. I've got a bunch of slides up here about interesting things, and we're just going to see how it happens. In fact, I'm probably going to ask you a lot of questions. I hope you got your thinking caps on, because those things right there are one of the most significant challenges to biblical authority that I know. From youth, our students, our kids are steeped in the idea of dinosaurs lived millions of years ago, and therefore, as soon as they open up the Bible that says thousands, there's a problem. Anyway, but before we talk about dinosaurs, we need to know what a dinosaur is. How is a dinosaur different than an iguana, or an alligator, or a turtle? Well, the answer is that dinosaurs, they stood up. Their legs are underneath them. All the other reptiles alive today, their legs stick out to the side, except for snakes. But we already learned something. Dinosaurs are a different group of reptiles. They're unique amongst themselves. I remember reading those, as a kid, you read the stories of people living for hundreds of years in the Bible, and I said, what if a lizard lived for hundreds of years? Would it morph into a T-Rex? No, because we have baby T-Rexes. They look just like the big ones. They also have different holes in their skull. There's holes right behind the eye in the skull. So not the nose, not the eyeballs, but another extra set of holes. And dinosaurs have that. Other things don't. That separates them. But then we get to ask the question, what happened to the dinosaurs? They're not here today. Where'd they go? What do we hear from the news media? What's the biggest story about what killed off the dinosaurs? A big meteor. Does anyone know how long ago that was in the evolutionary history model? 65 million years ago. At the end of the Cretaceous era. So we have the Paleozoic, the Mesozoic, and the Cenozoic. And the Mesozoic, middle living things, Mesozoic, that's when the dinosaurs lived. And they died at the end of the Mesozoic. That's the Cretaceous era. And after that is the Paleogene. So it's the KPG. K for German word for chalk, not the English, which starts with the C. So the KPG is the boundary between the dinosaurs and everything else. That's when this big meteor supposedly hit the Earth. Now, there is some evidence the meteor hit the Earth. There's lots of evidence of meteor strikes on the Earth. And I can't say that the meteor did not hit the Earth, but I can say that they have a problem answering some questions. And that is, okay, so if the dinosaurs died out at that time, how come the alligators didn't? How come the turtles didn't? How come the butterflies survived? We have fossils of all the major families of butterflies and moths living with dinosaurs, and they're still alive today. So that, to me, is a giant mystery. How could a giant meteor kill off dinosaurs and not butterflies? And I'll leave that to the paleontologists to explain. That's their mystery. But looking at dinosaurs, there are a lot of different species. Who can name a species of dinosaur? Wow. All right, T-Rex. Stegosaurus. Triceratops. Anyone who's going to name Pachyrhinosaurus or Styracosaurus or Centrosaurus? How many species of dinosaurs do you think there are? Millions? Thousands? Hundreds? Dozens? Hundreds. There's about 700 named species of dinosaurs. Actually, less than that. About 1/3 of the species that have been named historically have been removed because they realize, that's just a juvenile form of an older one. Oh, that's interesting. But there's only a couple of hundred species of dinosaurs. But they fall into very distinct groups. In fact, there's only about 70 basic types of dinosaur. Maybe 50, actually. Depends on how you count them and how you divide them. But these are the ceratopsids. They're all similar. They have some horns, they have a frill, they have a beak. If you found a toe bone of a ceratopsid dinosaur, you say, that's a ceratopsid dinosaur toe bone. You wouldn't know what species it belonged to, though. I would have a very hard time even separating some of these species. So what we have is a group of species that are similar to one another and distinct from other groups. And that's what we see in the fossil record. Maybe 50 different groups. How many species are standing here in the grass? That's the world's largest dog standing next to the world's smallest dog. Charles Darwin taught us a species change very slowly over millions of years. These breeds didn't even exist 100 years ago. Genetically, these are gray wolves. Not red wolves, not jackals, not coyotes. These are gray wolves. Yes, species can change, quickly even. But paleontologists trained in their millions of years thinking if they didn't know what dogs were, and they found bones of these animals in the fossil record, do you think they'd put them into the same species? No way. And yet we know they're the same species. How many species of dinosaur are here? I don't know. Because we don't have them in a zoo, we can't do crossbreeding experiments amongst them. All we have is their bones, and we know they belong to a specific group. About 50 groups. Here we have the ceratopsids there on the left, then that duck-billed hadrosaurs, we have the tank-like ankylosaurs, the spiky stegosaurs, the long sauropods, and then the theropods. What's a theropod? This is a theropod. The challenge. Almost all dinosaurs are plant eaters. The theropods were the predators. I'm skipping ahead of myself. Okay. Given dinosaur fossils, is there any evidence that they died in a big flood? Is there? You remember the first Jurassic Park movie? Was it 1985, 1987? Something like that? Remember the opening scene? They're out in the desert, and then the machine goes boom in the ground. They run into the tent, and they look at the computer screen. Remember how fast computers were back then? It drew a picture of the dinosaur. Remember that? And it was in that pose. The velociraptor with his head arched back and his tail arched back. They call this the dead dinosaur posture. We see it all the time, and it was a mystery for a long time. Because when an animal dies today, they don't go like this and lay backwards. They fall all different positions. Well, the paleontologists have realized that that is caused when an animal drowns. As the central nervous system is short-circuiting during the death throes, they tend to arch backwards, especially in cold water, especially when you have a long tail, because a long tail means you need muscles along the back. When those muscles tense up, you curl backwards. And this is bizarre. Why are most intact dinosaurs drown? Why are they buried with fish and clams? They're land animals. The evidence of Noah's flood has been staring us in the face the whole time. If you see, you can see it. It's right there. Now, there's one dinosaur that does not do that position, and that is the ankylosaurs, the little tanks on the bottom in white. They can't arch backwards. But most of the ankylosaurs we find upside down. Why? Because if you're top heavy and you're sinking through water, you're going to flip over and be buried upside down. More evidence of Noah's flood. Well, this is fun. We can take all the evolutionary stuff and reinterpret it quite easily. Oh, I'm going backwards. Sorry. Forward. Another question. Does Noah have a problem? He does not have a problem? Good. It sure looks like it, though. Is that true? You know that guy right there?
Is it Jack?
I don't know. Is it? I think it is. All right. We have an issue with big dinosaurs and a little ark. A big issue, obviously. But we can answer this in multiple different ways. First of all, a lot of dinosaurs are small. This is chicken-sized Compsognathus, fully grown. The average-sized dinosaur was maybe as big as a pony. We don't see them. They're not exciting. We see the big ones in all the museums. We have this idea that all the dinosaurs are big. No, a lot of them are small. Not only that, within each group of dinosaurs, there are big species and little species. So if Noah's job was to preserve two of each kind, an intermating group, he doesn't have to take the big ones. He's taking the little versions. Or, knowing that dinosaurs come from eggs, the largest dinosaur egg ever is about as big as an ostrich egg. They're not, the Fred Flintstone-sized eggs. That big. Noah could have taken hatchlings. He could have taken juveniles. He didn't have to take great-great-granddaddy Apatosaurus near the end of his life and, 100 feet long. He could take in the small versions. But then another question arises. How many dinosaurs, now I'm making assumptions here, right? I skipped ahead. I did not go describe what the flood is and all that, because, that's all the Sunday school stuff I'm assuming most of you already know. But given Noah's flood, given Noah's ark, how many dinosaurs would Noah have to take on the ark? Millions? Thousands of the 700 species that have to take 1,400 dinosaurs? Noah has to take 2 of each kind. And there's only about 50 basic kinds of dinosaur. What's 50 times 2? 100. And given the size of a Noah's ark, that's piddly. There's plenty of reasons. There's even room for the full-grown dinosaurs on Noah's ark, plus 2 of all the other kind of land animals. We don't have to worry about beetles. We don't have to worry about fish or salamanders. We're talking about the things that have to live on land, have a backbone, and breathe air. So the mammals, the birds, and the reptiles that live on land, that's what Noah has to preserve. And it's actually, when you add up all the kinds, maybe 700 pairs, including dinosaurs. Oh, if you want to get real conservative, it's like, it's not the family level, like, all the dog-like things and all the cat-like things. Let's go down a level to the genus. So dogs, wolves, coyotes, jackals. You might have 11 to 14,000 pairs. That's a lot. But there's still enough room for all those animals, plus all the food and water they'll need for an entire year. Because remember, Noah's flood didn't last for just 40 days. That's the initial rainstorm. They were on the ark for a year. Oh, and there's plenty of room. Now, at this point, a lot of creation presenters are going to go into evidence of man living with dinosaurs. I'm going to tell you that we at CMI are very uncomfortable with most of the evidence presented historically. In fact, we're having arguments right now amongst us which things we like and which things we really don't. So I'm going to give you my favorites, the things that look like they're going to withstand the stretch of time. But if dinosaurs lived on the earth with man, they're not here now. Therefore, they have gone extinct. The question is, when? My answer to why they went extinct is because the world today is radically different than the world before. If you take all the coal that's in the fossil record, and you say that used to be trees, which it was, and you turn it back into trees, there'll be 10 times more trees on Earth than currently exists. The world today is a desert. Have you ever seen a nature documentary where there's a couple lions and they're looking over the plains of the Serengeti, and there's a bunch of wildebeest and a bunch of grass? There's 10 times more grass than wildebeest and 10 times more wildebeest than lion. It's a pyramid. You need that much grass to feed that many wildebeest to keep a couple of lions alive. Well, if you take away 90% of the plant material in the world and bury it in the fossil record, you can't have that much life on Earth as previously existed. There's not a lot of food. Therefore, if you're big, you might be hungry in the post-flood world. Just saying. But this is the tomb of a bishop buried in England 600 years ago. And on the floor of this cathedral is his tomb, and on this brass band that goes around it are carved all sorts of animals, like that bat, that dog, that fish, that bird, obvious animals. No debate about what those things are. And then amongst them is this, which looks like 2 sauropod dinosaurs with their necks wrapped around each other. I know it's hard to see, but the guy on the left, there's spikes on his tail. Like, I don't know, Spinosaurus? Strange. Babylonian cylinder seals with large, long-necked animals with their necks wrapped around each other. Where'd they get this idea? That's bizarre. Maybe Tanistropheus. Just saying, I'm just throwing ideas out there. Or an Angkor Wat in Cambodia. This is 500-600 years old, hundreds of years before we discovered dinosaurs at the end of the 1700s. In this temple, they carved this door frame. There's a Buddha, there's a water buffalo, there's a monkey, and then there's that thing. What does that look like to you? Is that a pig? Is that a rhinoceros? Is that a stegosaurus? Now, this is debatable. Even amongst the creationists, we're debating this. But if there's evidence of man living with dinosaurs, that would kind of be what I would expect. Just saying. So let me ask you another question. Was there an age of dinosaurs? I remember my son when he was 6 years old. I asked him a question. I said, when did that happen? He goes, oh, you know, Dad, back in the age of dinosaurs. Like, my son? What is this? So where did he get that idea? He got it from the culture because we're taught about the age of dinosaurs all the time. But look at that picture. There's no birds, there's no mammals, and there's no grass. I was taught, even in graduate school, grasses didn't evolve till 35 million years ago. Well, the dinosaurs went extinct 65 million years ago. Dinosaurs never saw grasses. And yet, because paleontology gets more sophisticated over time, we've now found stomach contents and dung of dinosaurs. Petrified dung, which is weird because that stuff doesn't last long. Have you ever walked out in your backyard and tripped over a piece of fossilized cat mess? No, that stuff doesn't fossilize, and yet we have thousands of. I got a piece sitting on my mantelpiece, a little piece of dinosaur, because it's fun to have it, you know. Hey, my guest, hey, check it out, smell that. What do you think that is? Yeah, no, they're on to me really fast, ma'am.
My nephew's son, I think it was 2 years ago, they were at Ludlow Park in Rochester,
Okay.
and he's playing around in the brook that runs all the way through the park. He found, it was a tooth, a big tooth dinosaur tooth.
Oh,
He was on the news and he was in the paper.
that is my dream, to find a dinosaur fossil.
Donated to, whatever society, yeah.
Cool.
It was donated.
No, I have a lot of fossils in my house and in my office, but they're almost all Ice Age fossils. Because I used to live in Florida, and I've been on a mammoth dig. I have porpoise tooth. I have mammoth teeth. I've got all sorts of things, but I don't have any dinosaur era stuff. Someday I'm going to be on a dig.
There was a little kid, he didn't know what it was. He kicked it and he picked it out. And he was on the news and in the papers. It was 2 years ago, I think.
I have met several people that don't believe that dinosaurs existed. One pastor, actually. And I find this distressing. But I understand why they say that, especially going back, the 1800s, and this kind of like this kind of intellectual tradition that Satan or God put the dinosaurs in the rocks to test our faith. Whew. That's hard. Anyway, just saying. All right, so grasses live with dinosaurs and mammals. We have as many species of mammals buried with dinosaurs as we have species of dinosaurs. What age of dinosaurs? There's tons of mammals there too. We don't hear about them because they've ignored them. In fact, paleontologists are going back to some of the places they dug in the 1800s and are looking at the ground and saying they ruined everything. Because in the quest to get the big dinosaurs, they dug right through the little dinosaurs. They dug right through the mammals. And they're just now in pieces all over the ground. Arg. But there is a thing that looks like a flying squirrel, and that's a different branch of mammals called the multituberculates. Just like today there are placentals and marsupials, like kangaroos. There's two different branches of the mammalian family tree. There used to be three, the multituberculates, but there's things that look like flying squirrels. That looks like a platypus. It's got a groove in his jaw for the giant nerve that platypuses have. Just twice as big as a modern platypus. That thing there in the middle looks like a badger. There's a baby dinosaur in his stomach. We have beaver-like creatures. We have things that look just like hedgehogs with hedgehog hairs. So next time you see a Jurassic Park movie, there better be a hedgehog running through the underbrush. But they're not going to show you that because it looks too normal. The fossil record is full of things that you can instantly recognize because they're alive today, unchanged. And then dinosaurs. Yeah? Yeah?
Isn't it true that they downplay the extinction of other animals because there are a lot of animals that have gone extinct, are going extinct, but they're not the big.
Yes. They downplay. Yeah. The world, if you would, downplays the extinction of a lot of things because they don't quite fit the narrative. It's fun to talk about the extinction of dinosaurs, but what they also don't talk about is the lack of extinction. Platypuses, butterflies, those are boring because that's not a good story. It's like if you walked around in the real Jurassic world, there would be all the plants you recognize, maybe a tree fern, that would be weird, but oak trees and ginkgos and all these things you recognize, all the insects that you recognize, some of them bigger than they are now, but it'd be kind of like today, and then a dinosaur. Have you ever seen the movie Hidden Figures? Kevin Costner, the African-American ladies doing all the calculating to get the man to the moon? Cool movie, right? Well, at that facility in Maryland, there's a pile of rocks. It looks like where they dug out the foundation for the building, they threw it to the side and trees grew up around it. There was a guy dropping his wife off, a couple years ago. And he looks at this pile of rocks and he goes, I'm going to go look at these rocks. Must be a nerd like me, because I would do that. And he found a world-class discovery. It's a rock about this big. And in that rock is, in purple on the left, a sauropod footprint. In green, pterosaur footprints. In brown on the right, a footprint of a nodosaur, an osteoderm, or a skin bone, because dinosaurs are armor-plated, from a dinosaur. And then in the middle, in kind of gray to the left of that brown footprint, a coprolite, which is a piece of fossilized dung, which is weird. And then in blue, mammal footprints. Fossils aren't just bones. That's the fossilization of a behavior pattern of a community of organisms that all lived at the same time. And that's really cool. But we also find birds in the fossil record. Some weird birds and some very modern-looking birds. Now, a lot of the birds we find buried with dinosaurs have teeth. They're not like reptile teeth. They look more like dolphin teeth. They're like peg-like. They don't look like reptile teeth. But they also have claws on their wings. A lot of modern birds have claws too. You don't usually see them. But you know that the wing of a bird is its hand, right? Those are fingers, just like a bat. Well, fingers end in fingernails. And there's claws, at least 1/3 of all the groups of modern birds, there's at least one species with claws. But this is the Hoatzin of South America, the stink bird. They call it the stink bird. It burps a lot. It ferments food in its gullet, and so it's stinky. But they have claws on their wings. They also have a flat breastbone, which is bizarre. When you eat a chicken and you try to dig the white meat off the bird, there's a thing right here, isn't there? That's a keel. You know what that is? It's an anchor point for the chest muscles. It makes a triangle. It makes the chest muscles a lot stronger. It helps the bird to fly. All modern birds, except the Hoatzin, have a keel. A lot of the ancient birds didn't have a keel either. So that looks like a holdover from the dinosaur era type birds, where most of them have a flat breastbone and have claws, and so did this modern one, as if it never went extinct. In fact, that is the shape and size of an Archaeopteryx. Just saying. They look very, very similar. But we do have we have a few bird fossils. But some of the bird fossils have beautiful feathers. Can you see the feathers? Do dinosaurs have feathers? You know my answer to that question is, I don't care. Now, I do care because I'm a geek. I want to know, but it doesn't challenge my faith. The Bible does not say dinosaurs did not have feathers. That is a neutral question. For the creation model, for my faith, it doesn't matter. Now, I will tell you that there are beautiful feathers in the fossil record. And I will tell you that we've seen nothing like this on dinosaurs. But this is Anchiornis huxleyi. It has a beak. What's a beak? Well, how's a bird mouth different than yours? The answer is a bird can lift its upper mouth. It does this. I can't. They have a movable palate. The palate slides in and out, allowing them to lift their upper jaw. That's a bird. That's a bird. Notice it doesn't have a tail. Dinosaurs have long tails. If a bird has a tail, it's just feathers. There's a little nub on the rear end of a bird. Next time you eat chicken, you're going to be, hey. There's a little nub at the end of a bird's rear end. It's called a pygostyle. It's not a long, bony tail. It's a few vertebrae that have been fused together. It's very stiff. And bird feathers anchor to the pygostyle. So even a peacock doesn't have a long tail. It's got big, strong muscles to pull up the giant feathers. There's a pygostyle. Bird legs, bird feathers, bird beak. Is that a bird or a dinosaur? Was there an age of dinosaurs? I thought there was. I saw stuff like this, and I was convinced that evolution was true. Look at that. That's all the dinosaurs going all the way back in time through the Mesozoic. That's Cretaceous, the Jurassic, the Triassic on the left, going back in time to a single common ancestor. Oh, look at that. The paleontologists figured out evolution must be true. But looking at that, do you see a lot of dotted lines? You know what dotted lines are? Lack of information. And when you cover up the dotted lines, this is what you're left with. 50 sticks with no transitional fossils between them. There's actually no evidence of the evolution of dinosaurs in the fossil record. 50 basic kinds of dinosaur built by God initially that have gone extinct. Oh. Now, why all the dinosaurs extinct? Actually, I don't know the answer to that question. It is a mystery to me. But it's no less a mystery to the evolutionary paleontologists who can't explain why dinosaurs went extinct and butterflies didn't. We're talking about history here, and we don't have time machines. We can't go back and see it for ourselves. So we just have to leave it out there. I don't know the answer to that. Are you comfortable saying, I don't know? I'm more comfortable knowing the evolutionists can't explain butterflies. But I'm not using a Tucoca argument. That's a logical fallacy where you say, oh yeah, well he killed somebody too. That's not a good defense if I've been accused of murder, right? So all I can say is that nobody actually knows, and the story keeps on changing, and there's no evolution of dinosaurs in the fossil record. Those are the mammals and the birds that I showed you, overlaid with the evolutionary tree. So we have the Mesozoic era, the Triassic, the Jurassic, Cretaceous. By the way, Jurassic Park, most of those dinosaurs are Cretaceous. Sorry, I just ruined it for everybody. But the mammals, the evolutionary date for those mammals, they go right through the entire fossil record of dinosaurs. So I was taught, even late, even up through the 2000s, mammals evolved at the end of the age of dinosaurs. And they're little mouse-like, maybe rat-like sized mammals. And after the dinosaurs died out, that's when all the mammals evolved into giraffes and wallabies and people. And the birds, oh yeah, some few, reptile-like kind of birds lived at the end of the dinosaur era. And after the dinosaurs died out, that's when all the birds became birds today. That's not true. Now, I have a question mark there after birds because we don't have that many. Now, we do have about 100 Confucianosaurus birds, but most of the other birds are like one-offs. And there's only 6 maybe 8, because birds don't fossilize well. They're very light, they don't tend to sink, therefore they don't get buried under a mile of sediment and get petrified. But the evidence of dinosaurs with feathers. This is Sinosauropteryx, the poster child of the feathered dinosaur. Do you see that fuzz that runs down his tail and down his back? Well, Alan Fiducia, who's an evolutionist, not a Christian, not a creationist, he believes that birds evolved from reptiles, just not from dinosaurs. Well, he looks at this thing about 10 years after the announcement under a microscope, and he says, that fuzz is under the animal's skin and is obvious to anyone who looks. Why was it not obvious to the people who want to trumpet that these are feathers on a dinosaur? Because of their bias. That's why. All people are biased. You know that, right? All scientists are biased. You know that, right? Okay. Here's some more evidence of feathers on a dinosaur arm. This is on the top a velociraptor arm bone. And there's a red rectangle there. That's the second picture, blown up. And there's 6 little arrows, and you point in these little teeny, evenly spaced bumps that you can't even see. Below that, C, that looks like a flute, that is the arm bone of a turkey vulture with the feather stripped away, which is the bottom picture. Now, the third picture down, C, you see those bumps? Those are called quill knobs. When a feather, it doesn't just stick in the bird's skin. The flight feathers had to be anchored to something because the bird changes the shape of its wing. It sticks the feathers up, pulls the feathers down. That takes muscles, and those muscles are attached to the bone. And I don't know if they're there first or the pulling of the muscle makes the bump, but birds that change the shape of their flight feather patterns have bumps called quill knobs. Ostriches do not. Penguins do not. But nobody believes a velociraptor could fly. Why would a velociraptor have quill knobs? But a lot of reptiles have frills and spines. You realize that a feather is very different than a scale, right? I mean, look at those feathers. That is, you know what a scale is? It's just a bump in the skin. A feather is like a hyper-complex hair that has to grow from a follicle. And all has to be assembled, it has to pop out and unfurl into a feather. That is not a scale. Radically different. In fact, once dinosaurs supposedly evolved feathers, how do they lose their skin? Because reptiles slough their skin off every time they grow. They'd have to slough all their feathers also. It's a big problem for the evolution of dinosaurs. But we know that T-Rex did not have feathers. That is a given, because we have petrified T-Rex skin fossils from different places of his body. And there's no evidence of feathers because there has to be a hole, a big hole in the skin, and it's not there. So at least that one is feather-free. Okay. Notice how I'm hemming and hawing here and not giving you a straight answer? You know why? Because as a scientist, I have to be careful. And as a teacher, 1 Peter 3:1, is it not? Many of you should be presumed to be teachers, my brethren, for know that you should be judged more strictly. That keeps me up at night. And I don't want to tell you something I might have to untell you later. So I'm being cautious because as a scientist, scientists are trained to never say anything directly. You know that, right? We're trained to say, the data indicate. So that if later on someone discovers something different, I wasn't wrong, the data were wrong. Okay, that's our training. It's not weasel words, it's actually careful speech. And yet, what if I can show you that dinosaur fossils can't be millions of years old? Then the whole question of if they have feathers or not, I don't care. The whole question of did they evolve? No, because they don't have millions of years. All the questions get a lot easier once we realize there's lots of evidence of young, unfossilized, recent burial of dinosaurs. I'm going to give you 3 completely different areas of science. And if you want to reject this, fine, but there's 3 different areas of science that are arguing with this. One of them is an area called taphonomy, or rotting. It's the study of things rotting. We've been doing this since the 1800s, the long history of the study of taphonomy. And yet, this is the electron microscope pictures of a triceratop horn dug out of the Hell Creek Formation in Montana. And when they zoomed up on it, top 2 pictures, delicate bone material that hasn't been infilled with minerals. It's not petrified. The middle picture on the right, those blobs with the spikes, those are osteoblasts. Those are bone cells. Readily identified, we know exactly what they are. Intact cells? I can't leave a ham sandwich on the counter for a week before it starts turning green. Could I bury a pig in my backyard for 100 years and expect to find intact anything? How about 65, 70 million years of see, as I believe these things were buried in Noah's flood 4,500 years ago. I am shocked that there's non-decomposed tissue left in these things. I am absolutely shocked. I didn't expect it. What does the evolutionary paleontologist have to answer this? Nothing. Inside a T-Rex, this is what kicked it all off, was Mary Schweitzer working with Jack Horner at the Museum of the Rockies discovered inside a Tyrannosaurus rex leg bone, unpetrified tissue, flexible tissue, things that look like blood vessels and red blood cells. Notice the red blood cells have a dot in the middle. That's a nucleus. Your red blood cells don't have dots. Your red blood cells don't have nuclei. Reptile red blood cells do. Is that bacteria? No, that's the original material, not decayed over, millions of years? No, over thousands of years. The other evidence of DNA inside dinosaur bones. Now, not sequence information, but we can stain DNA with the stain that stains cells with a stain that stains DNA. Those are dinosaur cells stained with something I've used in a laboratory. It's called DAPI. It's a flat molecule that gets into the wines of DNA. As long as you have about 30 bases, it'll stick in there. You wash the cell out. It stays in the DNA. You shine ultraviolet light on it, and it glows green. There's evidence of DNA inside dinosaur bones. Now, on the right, knowing that bacteria and fungi live in dinosaur bones when they're buried in the ground, they had to test for something that would be unexpected, and that is proteins bacteria don't have. These are histone proteins, the protein your DNA wraps around inside your nucleus and the nucleus of reptiles, histones, and that's what the red dots are, a stain that lights up the histones. There's also antibody evidence of DNA. DNA in dinosaur bones? Over millions of years? I mean, the DNA that I left at the University of Miami when I left in 2003 in the minus 80-degree freezer is worthless today if they didn't throw it out. DNA doesn't last even at negative 80 degrees Celsius, it breaks down. Billions, not billions, but millions of years? No. There's also evidence of carbon-14 in dinosaur bones. Find that in Titans of the Earth, Sea, and Air, a great book over there. Carbon-14 breaks down too rapidly. Given the amount of carbon-14 in the air right now, the fact that plants are absorbing it, and we eat plants, so those fake plants back there, if they're real, they'd be absorbing carbon-14. We eat it, and we're slightly radioactive. 1 every trillion molecules or atoms of carbon in our body is radioactive. So after we die, we're not bringing any more, it starts breaking down. And after 70 to 80,000 years, there would be 0 left. If the entire Earth was a ball of pure carbon-14, how long would it last? If every atom on Earth was carbon-14, it would be gone in less than 1 million years. So if every 1 out of 1 billion is carbon-14, there's no way that dinosaur bones can have carbon-14 in them, but they do. Carbon-14, DNA, and non-petrified, still preserved dinosaur tissues. 3 completely different areas of science that argue that dinosaur fossils are not millions of years old. That is my concluding comment. Look, Creation Magazine's out there for you. Thank you so much for all of you who subscribe to it already. I really appreciate that. One more opportunity before we go. Exploring Geology with Mr. Hibbs, a kid's book, but Exploring Dinosaurs with Mr. Hibb. 8, 9, 10, 11, that's a great age for that book. And I'm going to leave you with this, 1 Peter 3:15, just like before. In your hearts honor Christ the Lord as holy, always being prepared to make a defense to anyone who asks you for the reason for the hope that's in you. You do it with gentleness and respect. I tried to model that. I tried to not be a jerk just now. But I tell you what, when people insult me, my Irish temper flares up and I just want to punch them in the nose. I can't do that. That's not Christ-like. But I also don't have to do that because God's on our side. The truth is on our side. I can rest in the Lord and trust in His Word. But it's a whole lot easier when I have questions like dinosaurs answered. Now, I don't have all the answers. I'll never have all the answers, but I have enough. I have enough to trust the rest. Now, God forgive me for my faith being so weak that I needed answers for dinosaurs before I could trust you, or maybe I can just trust Him more because some of these questions have been answered. And that's it. I can't answer any more. Oh, good. I got 5 minutes. Can we do 5 minutes of questions? Okay, questions work like this. Questions end in question marks. Please, no stories. No prophecies. You will have no idea what I've heard. Keep it short, and I'll try to answer quickly. I'll only do 2 or 3. I'm going to try to answer it quickly and point you to something that might answer it at more length. And please, don't ask me anything about COVID-19. Because it doesn't matter how I answer, someone will get mad. And please don't ask me a question that might separate my theology from what's taught here. We're going to agree on most everything, but no end times theology, Bible versions, predestination versus free will, no. In fact, you ask me a question, we got a sermon topic for next week, and you're going to be sitting right here. Okay, but anything about science is fair game. I don't know all the answers, so let's do Stump the Chump and let's see what happens. Was there a question back there? No? Sir?
Yes, just recently you wrote rotting. Could you just do a summary statement on that? Rotting proves show evolution to be impossible because of what now? Rotting, because you did rotting. Dinosaur bones, supposed to be millions of years old, but non-decomposed material.
There's a word there, wattage?
Rotting.
Oh, rotting. Oh, of course.
The absence of rotting.
Yes, the absence of rotting. We keep finding more and more dinosaur, mosasaur, pterosaur. They found some bones in Madagascar. They're as light as a feather. They're just dried out dinosaur bones. The insides are right there. They haven't been hollowed out. We find mosasaurs well, there's two different forms of soft tissue preservation. One is petrified soft tissue, which is weird because that means it petrified before the thing rotted away. And the other is non-petrified soft tissue, of which we're finding more and more. Does that answer the question? I don't know how to answer it any more than that. You want more examples? Then go pick up Titans of the Earth, Sea, and Air, or go to creation.com and dig into our article. We have an article on all the examples of dinosaur soft tissue that have been found. Okay. You?
I've heard some people state that we know for certain that there was not Adam and Eve, like they were the only people in the time that they were living. Like I'm not talking about, of course, they had sons
Okay.
and daughters, but that there was a massive humanity before Adam and Eve. Like, why do they say that, and what's your answer to that?
Okay, was there people before Adam and Eve? Did we evolve? Was there a huge population? Adam and Eve were just two random people in that population, and we know that there wasn't just an Adam and Eve. When they say we know there was an Adam and Eve, whatever comes out of their mouth next is a giant assumption, and they're usually not telling you the truth of what we teach. There is abundant evidence of Adam and Eve in that we can take all the genetic diversity of people, and I see people from different places in the world here. We can put all that genetic diversity into two people easily. So that's not a challenge. When we look at the distribution of genes around the world, like light skin is found in Europe and dark skin is found in Africa, and a different light skin gene is found in Asia, and you have blue eyes and brown eyes and red hair, and that's easy to fit into Adam and Eve also, especially when you add thousands of years of mutation since creation. But even when we look at 3 hours of genetics right here. I'm going to try to do it in 30 seconds. Ooh. The amount of variation amongst us can easily be fit into Adam and Eve. I carry 1/3 of the world's genetic diversity. Me alone. I've actually had my genome sequenced because I do stuff like that. It cost me $175 at a Black Friday special on Dante Labs. There are 3 million places where my mother's copy and my father's copy that I carry differ from one another. There are only about 10 million places like that in this room. There's about 10 million variants that God engineered into Adam and Eve, and they're found here. Now, the reason I don't have 10 million, well, Europe was populated by a small tribe of people that had been inbreeding ever since. That's why Europeans look like Europeans. Why Africans look like Africans, why Native Americans look like Native Americans. Small groups of people that are migrating around the world after the flood with only some of the genetic diversity that was on the ark. And we can explain people. Biblical Biology 101 has a whole chapter, maybe 2 chapters on this. Lots more information on creation.com. We have books on where the races came from. We have articles. We have videos on those sorts of questions and all things like that. But that is an hour-long lecture that I love to give. So thank you for that. But there's a lot more information out there. Okay, can we do one more question? I'm not going to let the pastor ask a question. Ma'am.
Okay, you told us the story. What's the 2 holes?
Oh, what's the 2 holes? The supraorbital foraminifera or something like that. It's just, when I'm doing my normal talk, I have a different slide that is not in the talk. The talks I'm giving, these are just JPEGs from my PowerPoints that have been saved on the computer back there, and I didn't have the ability to click on this one slide. So just trust me, when you look at a dinosaur skull,
What's it do?
what does it do? Oh,
You got the eye, you got the what's the hole?
it just might be for weight. Other than that, I'm not sure what the hole is for. It's not a place for the ear canal. It's not a nose. I don't know what it's for. Sorry, that's a cool question though. Oh. All right, I need to stop, I guess. Does someone want to close, or shall I close? Okay. Thank you, everybody. I hope you're encouraged. That's the best I can do is encourage, because I can't teach you everything. So, let's pray us out of here. Father, we are humbled by your word and your world. We're excited to learn some new things. Help us to hold on to them. Help us to build that quiet faith, that determined faith, that faith that cannot be shaken. We know it's there, Lord. There's so many examples in Scripture. Help us to hold on, even if we just touch the corner of your robe. Help us to reach out and hold on as if our life depended upon it, because it does. And fathers, we're doing that. Please use us as examples of transformation, of examples of steadiness. And there's someone in this room, Lord, that's really being challenged right now by the world and all the atheist stuff that's hitting us left and right. Bless them, Father, to see clearly and to stand strong and to find someone who's got good answers. And Lord, help us all just to reflect Christ in our lives over the next several days. And just, Lord, there's going to be struggles, there's going to be temptations, there's going to be failing points, but just pick us up again like you've done so many times. We want to work for you out of gratitude, and we are unable to do it without your help. Amen.